Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PowerPaps Podcast. My name is Alicja, and I haven't done a podcast in a while, so this is kind of my first try at getting back on the horse. It's a recording with me and my colleague, Alicja Gilderdale, who is an amazing Power Platform architect. She's really good at kind of getting the functionality out and making business value with it. So we're a part of the Global Black Belt team, and today we're going to show you one of the demos that she's made. I was blown away by it, and I just immediately said, we got to share this because there are so many layers. So this is the first one in a series of at least two, or hopefully many, where we go in and we talk a bit deeper and look underneath the hood, try and explain what the value is here and what she's done to kind of unpack some of the complexity that you have to do and things you have to know when you're actually building complex automation and using agents to actually make this happen. So enjoy, and hopefully you will ignore the issue with the audio in the beginning, because it's my first podcast in a while. I just suddenly heard echo, so she's quite echoey in the beginning, but that gets better as long further out in the talk, and I think the quality is good at the end. So enjoy this, and welcome to the podcast.
I only joined Microsoft just about 7-8 months ago. I was a customer, and last 5 years I basically did everything I could to learn Power Platform and to implement Power Platform in my previous role. It was a very fascinating role when I really made quite a big impact on how our processes, our productivity has improved within the organization, which is so much fun. I had as part of it, and I've got an amazing opportunity to collaborate with Microsoft product team for Power Platform, and my journey couldn't be short of very exciting. Every year, meetings with the product, listening to what really the Power Platform is doing, how is it doing. Being part of the customer advisory board as well as champions community. I decided that this is the path for me, and joining Microsoft was one of the amazing decisions that I made over last year. So here I am now advising customers on production implementations, but as I mentioned, just AI and Copilot Studio become my daily focus on what I do with the solutioning and advising customers on how to move forward with AI strategy.
Yeah, and today I thought we'll go through, because one of the things when you showed me, you're working with customers and one of these cases, or you're building demos and showing kind of the art of the possible with the technology. And I saw this fantastic onboarding or vendor onboarding demo that you did using Copilot Studio. And it looked amazing. And then I was thinking, wow, it's like you're doing stuff that I guess I would think you would have to know when you're building these more, let's say, more complex agents. And there were some tricks, and you showed me some things. And I hope we can kind of deep dive into some of those. You show us the setup and how it's working. But before we do that, I would love you to just kind of take us through what you build at the demo, so that you can kind of deep dive underneath the hood when we do that. So go ahead. I see you're sharing your screen here, and I think that should be possible.
So there's been quite a development for the last, I would say, 3 months in different shapes and forms. What you'll be seeing now is one of the latest agents that I built as part of the integration with the ERP systems, F&O, but most importantly, showing the power of the autonomous agents. So this is very clearly, it's only focusing on what the autonomous agent does, and its power and capabilities to deliver something absolutely amazing when it comes to revolutionizing the processes and having quite a lot of intelligence as part of this. So it was a fascinating subject for me. Well, maybe the vendor onboarding process is not super fascinating when it comes to the processes themselves, but I think it shows something very close to the customer, to the reality, to the real use case. So it was something that I wanted to show show from the perspective of how would that work from something that could be fairly a manual job and requires quite a lot of different teams to really get involved, to the process which could be end-to-end automated and only really bring the human agents to the conversation when all of the certain checks are being completed. So before I get to the demo itself, I think it would be really interesting to maybe just show the spectrum of different agents that you can build as part of this overall process. So the idea is to not only just focus on one step, but understanding that agents can now really connect and communicate together to build something so much more powerful than just one process itself. And the one that I'm focusing on is this third section here when it comes to assumption of the vendor has been identified and already wanted to onboard the vendor into the system under the FNO. So the idea is that a certain documentation has to be provided. Those documents needs to be checked, validated, data extracted, maybe coming back to the customer, to the vendor on asking any additional data and following a standard checks, understanding what has been completed and what's not. So this is really giving you like a spectrum, how many other agents you could also build around it, and how many other teams this could support from the expertise point of view. Okay.
I think some of the kind of misconceptions with agents that I've seen is they think too strategic, right? And this is like super operational. Where you basically talk about things that we do every day, but some of them are like cognitive things, like picking out information from documents. We've done that a long time. But when you have various types of documents and complexity within the documents, and having that new now generative AI kind of coming into the picture and doing some of the heavy lifting on the orchestration, and also let's say the unstructured processes that might be involved here, because sometimes you miss some information in these things. So what do you do then? And I think that the wonderful thing that you've shown is kind of the automation, the ability for it to reason over this and look through the information and then kind of get back to it. So yeah, it's a really cool thing. And yes, you put it to FNO in this case, which I of course am very happy about. But I think you built this before to some other technologies and other ERPs as well. So there's no limitations on where these can basically send or read the data, I guess.
Absolutely. It's more about building something intelligent enough to understand the expertise of the subject and to being able to leverage that whichever system you're going with. And it could be multiple systems as much as multiple triggers as well. So yeah, very, very important. But what I want to add to what you just mentioned, Fred, is the fact that those agents, they don't sleep. They don't need break, and they basically will react upon any triggers that come into to the system. So whether it's a shared mailbox, email coming to a shared mailbox, or maybe changes to the data sets, that makes a massive difference to how quickly you can really process those steps that are sometimes repetitive. They are related to data entry, to data extraction, to really coming back and forth communication. That's not necessarily you want to engage the human agent at this stage to ask for more details and back and forth. You want the human agents to really leverage the power of their intelligence to say, okay, now I have all of the checks completed and I can verify the outcome, and then I can make a decision whether the final step of onboarding somebody, well, the vendor in this case, is going to happen or not. So we're still putting a lot of checks in between those steps. It's not just about replacing everything. It's about shifting towards the manual input and repetitive tasks to really more about verification from the human being to understand that the process has been right. Okay.
Yeah,
so
having human in the loop, I think that's also very additive to this. And we also have, of course, some places where we think customers normally work in. Like it's not only inside of the ERP system, but we spend a lot of times in Teams, which is a great benefit for us, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you more within the slides. I'm going to probably only show you just only one, just to maybe indicate that thinking of how we see the agents in the spectrum of specialty. So in this case, you have a mesh of different expertise of those agents. They can be owned by different line of business, because that's where, let's say, you have a legal team, you have the processing team, you have the procurement team, and that can be built as very powerful mesh to make something distributed but working together. And I have this analogy of those things to work in a spectrum of, if you relate to microservices, and they communicate together within the certain contract. So there's an interface and there's a specific input of the data that's required to communicate between those microservices. Agents work very similar way. So you have a contract of working together, but independently being also built as part of this mesh.
Okay.
So this is where the power is. Okay, so you're ready for the first demo, and we're going to focus on the demo with the FNO, and then I'm going to jump behind the scenes to show you a little bit more about the system itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
The demo is recorded in parts because I wanted to make sure that everything is very well presented for everyone. So this is the first thing, is to set the baseline. So we're going to get an email from the vendor to our shared mailbox, and the vendor basically has sends an email. So it's Peter Robinson from Adventure Works. That's the vendor. That provides 3 documents that have been requested from them. First one is the certificate of business. So understanding for example, in UK, you have to register your business, and the proof of address, which you see in this document. It's a mock-up document, so there's no sensitive data obviously here. You also have a VAT, and this is just to prove that the business can work and has the VAT registration number. And actually the first one was a proof of address. This is the certificate of the registered business in UK, as an example. So these are fairly legitimate documents, although they're having fake data, and that email is being sent to the shared mailbox of the company called Contoso, so our typical company. What basically happens next is how the flow, how the agent is recognizing upon the trigger of the email being received to that mailbox, and what decision it will make. And here you go. Oh, that's just the one here. Let's see. Let's hope it's playing. Here you go. So what happens here? You have 2 split screens. First one on the left-hand side is the flow, dynamic flow built by the autonomous agent. It has a bucket of different functions, different actions that it can choose in order to follow certain instructions. And I'll show you later how those instructions look like. But the process of getting those emails with the attachments happen very quickly. So first is a verification of the system, of the record in the system. In this case, is FNO. Then you can see checking whether the onboarding record has been created, and creates one if it doesn't. Then goes into the email and extracts all of the attachments. And this process that it's doing now, it's taking all of those original attachments and analyze them through GPT. To understand the logical splitting of the files. So if there were multiple files in the same attachments, it's going to split them and identify the type and classification of those attachments. As you can see on the left-hand side, I have a very simple model-driven app, which shows the progress, and the list is growing and changing a couple of statuses, so like a processed, split in progress, but also all of that record here is the overall status of the verification checks for the onboarding process. So you'll notice that the onboarding status, the overall onboarding status, is set to not verified. But I also have a couple of things that I wanted to specifically verify. And I said the registration number, the company name, certificate number, VAT number, address, and so on. So this was very quick. But basically what you see here is behind the scenes, there's an automation which basically goes through using another AI function with the GPT to extract the data and to understand whether the address is matching the legitimate address in the document itself. This is pretty fast, but what you will notice here is that agent is also capable of communicating with the human team. So in this case, sending a adaptive card, asking for double check whether the verification steps are complete, and allowing the human agent, to basically go and make the final decision on the onboarding status. So now you can see the details are checked. Verification is set for all of those different checkpoints, and the reason for that verification that's been made by the agent, by the AI, is also visible for anyone to do the auditing. If you look back at the left-hand side, it shows you all of the steps that this agent decided to do. I didn't tell anything to, there's not really a hard-coded definition of saying if there's an amount of files, go and do it, go and, there is specific action. It just simply makes that decision upon what email nature is. So what is the subject and the content of the email, how many documents are within the email, does it need to go and split all of those documents, and then go and do the verification. As you can see here, like do the vendor check details, check the vendor details to see, okay, one by one, all of those documents are important because they may contain information that verifies what I need to check in as part of the process. And bear in mind, this is a demo. This is everything behind the scenes, right? Is something that you need to take under consideration for additional steps that may be required for your specific use case scenario.
Just looking at this, I mean, it's not just Copilot Studio in and of itself, right? You're using a lot of the surrounding capabilities, and I think it's interesting that you're using kind of a Dataverse table to have like an overview of where the transactions are happening. So you have like a back and forth with that. And I think that is something that we forget, right? We look at Copilot Studio in a vacuum, or the Copilots in a vacuum, but we really want these agents to have agency. You might want to have them kind of have a memory or some intermediate storage that they can kind of process while they're working on it before they hand it off to the end system. And that is an added value, because the other way around would be to just go directly into F&O and have all of these data. And then you would also have to, right, some of these are specifically just for this process. And so you don't want to build that or add that data inside of your ERP just because you need to have these things. But now you're kind of doing it pretty smart by utilizing the intermediate storage in Dataverse before it's done. And as always, it's very legible, right? You see the processes. Now humans can be in the loop and have an overview of the processes as they're going along, which I find super interesting as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right here. I think the power of being able to be really agile when it comes to those additional tables and records you want to maybe evolve over time as well. So yes, this is based at the verification check status, and the record, which is an individual record in the Dataverse table, is there because it's a one-off state. right? You make a decision that you want to onboard somebody, and you're not going to. What you want is the output, which is success or not success, right? So verified, not verified. But the details of that can be kept for some time, and then the process may expand with additional checks you want to add, and you can really leverage that flexibility with additional tables that are not necessarily the ERP or CRM tables, but they are there to really support the business. So very, very well noted. And what you also see here, that you made another good point, is those agents, and that's something that I learned as part of the process. Those agents, they need some level of verification themselves as well. So when I keep those statuses, they are very important for the every so often agent going into the record and saying, hey, based on the status, what's missing or what do I need to do next? Right. So with everything that you do, there's an assumption of checkpoint, of being able to come back to the source of truth, saying this is my current onboarding status. What the agent needs to make a decision as moving next. And in this state, you'll see there's a DV list vendor verification details. That's exactly that step. When it goes, reach out to the latest status, and then it says, okay, so verification is complete. Now I need to send it to the onboarding team. And this is the happy path, by the way, right? So everything that you've seen is just a beautiful, beautiful going one direction. But I do have unhappy path too, because somebody would ask, what if something goes wrong? What if the vendor sends incomplete information that doesn't support that status? And the answer is exactly what the agent should do with its intelligence, recognizing it and asking for more questions, and doing it without me even like controlling it in a certain way. That's why it has the Gen AI orchestration to make that decision. Okay, so if don't take my word
just
for it.
Just a few seconds. I'll try and because again, I put on this like first time we've done a podcast in a while, and I have to change to my headphones. And then I'd have to swap you on my properties here over to the headphones because I got some back in. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well.
All right. Yes. Yeah. And I think this will greatly improve our sound quality on the stream as well. So, yeah, let's
we're good to go.
We're good to go. Let's go.
So let's do the another part. Yeah. Let's go into I'm just thinking maybe we should do the unhappy path.
Oh,
right?
Yes. We never show the unhappy path in demos, so that's why I'm here. I love that we can deep dive into these. It's super interesting.
And we will break it down to those points. So don't worry, we'll get there. So this is the unhappy path when the email is only sending two or one document. And in this case, you will find that it's going to try to recognize all of the documents, process them in exactly the same way as you've seen it before. Now what you will notice on the left-hand side is that it's only executing on one split of the document and only once verifying the details. And that's because the email didn't have all of the attachments that was needed. And also as part of this, you can see that the details on the right-hand side show you that there's only one component being verified, which is the name registration status with additional points. But the overall status is incomplete. Also, what you just noticed, there was a pop-up of the email that basically sends automatically to the vendor, in this case to Peter Robinson, identifying that some information has been missing and asking for more documents.
So that happened fully autonomously in the backend. It just like, hey,
that is correct. Okay. I never wrote this email. I never.
And now you're answering. What you're doing now is answering that, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So it basically checks the detail, the status, and says it's incomplete. Then it goes and checks as part of the verification in the record. It goes and says, so what is complete, what is incomplete? And it identifies that certain information is incomplete and only asks for that information within the as part of the email. So it's very personalized. Email content is generated using Gen AI, so using the GPT model within Power Platform. And all I asked was saying, based on the current status of the onboarding record, send an email to the vendor with the relevant subject and relevant content. Yeah, but that means that it can send an email confirming that something has been successful. It sends an email asking for more details. It sends an email answering question of the customer if they, let's say, reply to the email and ask for more information. So all of that, it's within the bracket. Another important bit was I wanted to ensure that that communication is very, it stays within the same conversation, because and it could be a choice of the team that builds the agents. But in this case, if you noticed on the right hand side, there's something called agent conversation ID. So this is one column of the value within the verification process, which basically identifies a unique ID of that agent conversation. So I can always reference it back. And when I'm getting an email and it is identified as a continuous email because of unique ID of the vendor, maybe email address of the person that sends an email, or any additional information, it will go and retrieve the conversation ID and continue adding the steps into the agent flow itself. So this is very powerful for consistency of the history of that conversation with the agent. So what you see here, I'm simply replying to the email like, apologies, I forgot to attach the documents, and I'm adding some documents to it. So you will notice here.
Because this is from the response. This is from the side of the vendor, right? Yeah.
Exactly. The vendor, so Peter, is responding to this email with very, just simply adding additional files. And what you will notice in a second, that this list of documents is growing, because now the everything is processing again within the same flow. So one good point to notice here is when the email has been sent to the vendor in the first place. I believe that was here. So verification checks, I'm pretty sure it was one of those steps here, and it was asking for more details. And now you can see that the email has been retrieved, and data again being extracted, and follow very similar process to what's been instructed to do as the agent. Okay, so we're continuing on the unhappy path. And as you can see,
it seems pretty happy to me, to be honest. I mean,
Oh, sorry. I just jumped into it. Let's see if I can just revert it back. But so if we just basically get it from here, it's splitting documents, it's adding them, it's doing all of the right things that it's supposed to be doing.
Oh, so there's a sub-process doing document splitting as well.
There is, yes. It's a fairly smart process to basically identify dynamically the documents within one attachment. It's very powerful when you think about how AI can really help us to make it such an easy step. What previously was very difficult to make to complete without AI. So as you can see here, now the path is happy again. But the cycle happened twice. The information has again been sent to the team, to the onboarding team, and onboarding team decides that the review is completed. They can go back to the system, check the reason, and that's
one thing in that message also, the dialogues inside of Teams. I mean, we could also because I mean, if you were to kind of stage this into some type of ERP process or other, let's say, line of business system anyway. The processing of the documents isn't something that I guess is natural to have inside of that system. So again, having that extensibility through Dataverse, processing the different documents, having them stored there. And I guess also those messages coming up, like now it was just summarizing it. But I guess you also could have a link where we could deep dive into that specific record.
Absolutely.
And then you have all of the, let's say, the thought process behind it, the validation that it does. And I love that you kind of pulled out the reasoning behind what's the certification reason and how it actually extracted that. So you don't have to go into the process to figure it out, but you have these very niche lines of communication. That's each of the different process steps in a single agent with all of these things. And you haven't skimped on the complexity here either, right? I mean, when you do document splitting, I mean, it is pretty cool. So
yeah, it's super fun to find it. It took me a while to get there to actually understand how we can do it, but it's when you start playing with GPT, it's very powerful, as we all know. So yeah, the one point that it's worth mentioning is, because the system of records, which is a core part of your business, right, is something that you only really want to hold the information that is relevant to that system. You may not necessarily want to onboard somebody prematurely. Right, those records stay there, and it's not that easy to maintain them and just to add those additional steps where you haven't yet, other than verification of the FNO, whether the vendor already exists or not. I haven't yet involved necessarily the FNO in the read and write process. Or rewrite.
Yeah, not yet. And this is what I love. We can abstract all of these processes out of the complexity of the ERP, right?
Yeah.
But the end document is a vendor record. And
exactly.
I guess that's kind of the final piece of the puzzle here.
That's right. And what you noticed here now, because I selected in my teams in that adaptive card. And by the way, if you haven't played with adaptive cards, I had a chance to recently play with dynamically built adaptive card using GPT.
That we haven't. Is that coming? Because I've seen that on the roadmap, and we are privy. Can we share that with people? Remember, we're streaming now, so
this is to be honest,
it's kind of semi, because it's been there as a selection, and it says like to be continued. But I guess
yeah. No, you're right. The one that I was playing with was actually just going out with your imagination and say, create me an adaptive card that includes this, and this, and it actually used GPT to create a structure of the card and build it dynamically. So you don't need to have any predefined functionalities other than a GPT prompt within the Power Platform, so AI Builder functionality to leverage that. So it's very powerful. You can give it in examples as well if you want to, and you can just maybe slightly say, hey, update this depending on A, B, or C. So I would strongly encourage.
Are we doing the form from a napkin example again, or is it? You could do that, right? You just draw it on a napkin. It's like here's my adaptive card. Make it, right? Yeah.
That's very, very good point. If you were to use GPT prompt and pass the image. You could do that. You could ask it to build something similar within the adaptive card.
All right.
Could be.
We're back to business happening on napkins again. I like the thought of that.
That's right. One point of like while you're on this one.
Yeah.
When you are, for those who are familiar with AI Builder, you get to have the play with the GPT, and you also have a data sources or references that you could give like additional context. So with the agent, you can provide additional knowledge, and one of that knowledge could be a access to adaptive card website, which then equipped additionally the agent to understand what the adaptive card is and the templates of those adaptive cards. So I would, if you are playing with the agents, I would say give it the reference for the knowledge to the adaptive cards website.
Oh,
and you will get a little, yeah.
So it can kind of do that on its own. Yeah, look, I've seen this. There's a suggestion when you want to answer, like, how is it going to answer? It could just be kind of a prompt or a text prompt.
Yeah.
Or it have the dynamic the dynamic card, but then you have to kind of specify yourself, and that's a bit of a pain. It takes a while to kind of understand it. It's a totally different scripting language. There's the structure of the data and stuff like that. So that's a bar to pass. Like, you have to learn these things. I would suggest anybody do it, because you can use it in so many places. It's kind of a generic design object in a data card. But once
Just
you've
make
done
sure,
that, right?
yeah, and make sure that you, because the versions of the adaptive cards are important.
Yeah.
So make sure that it's part of the prompt to what you want to target. Because
if you look on top, on the designer, you can pick what different types of it's going to be used for. If you do the teams, it will kind of default to 1.5, and so you can use that. So do the context first, use the designer. I think many people forget that, and then the only place they actually change it is inside of the card. And then there's functionality around, like the carousel, and there are other things that's in there, and I guess it will add more capabilities there. But it's really, I mean, they can't just throw things and graphical components in it, because it has to be supported for, let's say, teams. It has to be supported for inside of finance and operations now as well, and in other components that we're using, and even inside of it's the same component that you're building if you want to build inside of Viva Connections. I think there's a possibility to use adaptive cards in there as well. So it's a good skill set to have.
Yeah. I just want to make sure, Fred, that we are sharing my screen. I can see it.
Not now, but now we are.
Okay. Yeah. So as you can see here, it's like there's a lot of to unpack in this whole process. Yeah. And just to complete the whole loop.
Yeah. What happens?
What we're getting is very much an email that it's now being sent to vendor, to Pete, saying, hey, you're ready to do your purchase order. Now we are fully onboarded within as a vendor. Feel free, and these are the steps for sending the purchase order. So that's really conclude on the happy and unhappy path. And I'm aware that there may be a bit of curiosity over what's behind the scenes and how this is all happening. Yes. So let's just dive into it then. Let's just go into the system itself, and that will be this one here. Okay, so let's look underneath the hood. Exactly. For those who are not familiar, maybe we should just cover very simply a little bit of layout here. When it comes to, anyone can try with Copilot Studio, and now everyone should be able to also try Autonomous Agent. So again, we're focusing on Autonomous Agent, which has the orchestration switched on as the generative AI. What does that mean? It makes decisions on the steps and how to drive those dynamic flows using the Gen AI functionality. So I'm barely using any topics. So if you were to get used to using topics, or maybe more structured key phrases that you trigger the topics, here you really give more flexibility and more independence to the agent itself. Mm-hmm. And what's important, and what people ask us a lot, and I'm sure, Fred, you heard that many times too, is like, what's the difference between what you just showed me between the automation using, let's say, Power Automate, and what we're doing here with the autonomous agents? And I have a couple of things that answer it, but the most important is we can't give the context of expertise to the flow.
The context of expertise. Tell me what you mean by that.
Okay, so we can't say to the flow, you are an expert in onboarding the vendor, right? But if you give it to the agent, saying you are an expert to onboarding the vendor, agent has that trained intelligence to also identify what does it mean to onboard the vendor.
Okay.
Right. So it gives itself additional expertise and years of experience, if we were to say like a human things.
Okay. Yeah.
To say, if I need to onboard a vendor to the system, what do I need to do to make it happen? What is my end-to-end? Right. So even if I wouldn't give instructions in here to be a little bit more explicit what I wanted to follow as a suggestion, I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't do some part of that process because of its background knowledge. Okay.
Okay.
And it's worth experimenting. I'm not going to do that on the live stream, but it's worth experimenting. That knowing that you give the context to the agent, you say, you're on board somebody, or you're the expert answering questions in very specific manner, or with the knowledge base that you have inside your configuration. That is giving a lot of context to the agent itself.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do it with the Power Automate. And as much as we can build the Power Automate, and they are a strong part of this whole process, because bear in mind that flows are the core process to bring this agent very powerfully into life. You also have a lot of flexibility, because agent can adjust for small changes to the process, or maybe a nature of an email or a trigger that is being sent to the agent. It understands those varieties, those discrepancies between the processes themselves. But also it gives you ability to trigger multiple, or add multiple triggers to the agent. So normally with the flow, you may need to create like a parent flow and then call the child flow below, and all of that logic has to be defined. Right? With the agent, you simply make that definition by identifying what will be my trigger. And in this case, the trigger is, I have only one trigger, which is the when email arrives to the mailbox. But you can have when the record is updated, and you can see that you can add a lot of different triggers here, and that list is growing. But if we are able to actually open it, you will see that when the row is modified, when a SharePoint is updated, when you can even do the on occurrence, right? So you can on a regular basis every Friday build me a report on certain certain data. So you have that list is growing, and it's getting like even the planner is part of the trigger.
What's the output of that? Because again, these look like the Power Platform connectors.
Yeah.
So there are 9 which are featured, but could you do any trigger?
Yeah, so let me show you something. Okay, let's go and dive into this very simple flow. So when you ask if the email arrives to the shared mailbox, it will ask you a couple of details of which directory or subdirectory you want to use for this email, and then it has this predefined function here that is saying send a prompt to the specified Copilot processing.
So
and if
so when you're kind of creating these when you're going from inside of Copilot Studio, when you're saying activate the trigger, it picks one of these things, and what it basically does then is kind of put a 2-step Power Automate process in the backend, which then has the trigger element that you want it to do, and then a pass through, which is basically a prompt, I would assume, into the.
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. So what you will see here is you will have this very specific function, which will be related to the agent, and you can choose which agent you want this to be called. And obviously, this is all combined together when you start from the agent end, and it will predefine, so help you out with all of this. And it will also most of the time. So what I added here, and I really wanted to add as part of the message sent to the agent was some additional information about the message ID as a very specific variable.
And the message ID is from the email, right? So all the emails have a unique, inside of Exchange, they would have a unique message ID. And is that to kind of trace it back to the origin of the...
So it traces back, the truth is that I'm also passing the full body of the email. Right, the full body of the email will be quite a lot of HTML code, which will also include the message ID.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, I made a decision that I want to specifically call out the message ID, because I wanted to somehow extract it as part of the agent process as the variable. I'm still experimenting, to be completely honest with you. I'm still experimenting with certain things, especially when it comes to predefining the variables. within the autonomous agent. And I think I'm getting to the right level where I'm very comfortable with that. But I think I just simply wanted to expose more that specific ID itself.
You're
And
using semicolons. Is that just a prompt thing, or does it do anything functions in it? It's just
so this is
delimited.
this is where it comes to the natural language. You can make a decision of how you want to write. I identify let's say different parts of the messaging as semicolon, but that's my personal preference. It could be a dot. You may find that maybe a new line with the rich text will put /n. Which again will be recognized if you were to pass it through Gen AI. It will recognize the rich text as well, right? So whichever way you think that works best on what you want to expose. If you want to, you could even run a step somewhere in between to extract the data or to be converted as a plain text. And if I was to just go back and show you the activity itself. So what you can do with the agent, and we're just only scratching the surface, and we're already in. What you will notice here is, let me just take this process. You can see all of the history that happens. And if I go back to the very beginning of it, the trigger, that's called the activity map, when you see all of the bubbles. When you translate it to the transcript, you will see a little bit more details on the conversation itself. So again, what you'll notice here is this whole body of the email that I sent in this very crazy rich format that gives you somewhere in between. It will have an information about the message ID.
I see it on top. It says conversation ID.
So there's a conversation ID. That will be a message ID, I believe, because it's identified as ID. I know. So the reason why I wanted to specifically extract this ID here was to name this ID from the email as a message ID in my agent. Okay, so that's why you will see that additional point that I created in the output. So what you will find then is obviously a couple of, you will identify text here, business license, here you go. So the main message inside the email as a plain text is somewhere in between those lines here. Okay.
So the entire body, that's a tip, right? Just send the entire body, because then you can kind of reference anything that's contextualized in the email. You have the conversation ID, which is kind of the thread that you're doing, and then you have also the specific message ID, and it can be
absolutely
easily extracted. And
you also see here the history that all of the emails that have been sent or received by the agent on additional information that was required, right? So this email is actually saying, we're looking for more details from you.
Yeah, that was the one we saw. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All
okay.
Right. So,
you need to keep me on track.
Another thing, so it's a multi-step process, right? And you've set it up with numbers on top here for the general instruction. It's a short instruction because it was a long kind of running process with much back and forth. But that, I guess, is kind of the orchestrators that you've done. What was your thought process when you went through and kind of designed the general instructions here?
A very good question and very tricky one. Over time, you will learn that working with agents, it's not necessarily you have to have the end goal, and you have to have a overall design. So you have your North Star, but you shouldn't be addressing all of those features and functions by simply writing an essay and copy and paste it as an instruction. That will put you nowhere in most of the cases. Because the best confidence that you can gain that agent will be doing what you want it to do is testing every single action that you ask it to do and then add upon it. So it's very incremental, at least at this point.
Okay.
As a good example, those instructions are not pretty. I wrote them just so they fit to my purpose, and I wanted to reformat them. I wanted them to look nicer. So I went to Copilot and I asked, hey, make this message nice, like those instructions nicer. and I pasted here the modify instructions, and I didn't get the same results from what the agent was supposed to be doing. So it's very important that don't discourage yourself, because working with AI, it's a learning process, and everyone has to go through it. My Just to give you an example of how difficult sometimes it is to work with AI because of its its intelligence, is we have to learn how we talk to AI. And I always say we are in a process of understanding how to write the effective prompts. So it took me some time to have this aha moment when I said, okay, so that works, and I need to be clear. I need to understand that if I confuse the agent, or if I confuse AI in general, and I say maybe, or if this, or maybe that, it will not really take it very well. So
I see you have a couple of if statements, and you've kind of pre-dashed them, but it's basically a bunch of sets of operations that it's supposed to be doing, and then you have like clauses within those operations where you've said, okay, so if we have a response, then like if it's this status, then you do this, and
that
that
is correct. It's just understanding of whether it's going to follow those instructions, and what kind of structure does it need to have, so I don't confuse it. Because and I'm not necessarily very happy with those instructions, like in the point 5 when it says like set if the onboarding status is set to ready to review, then send a message. If it's incomplete, then do this. So I put quite a lot of if statements, but I think I could be much clearer to the agent to build that instruction even better. Yeah. So work in progress as always. So one advice is you don't have to. So what you see here is actually pretty detailed, and I would say it's not necessarily required to be so detailed. If the agent has certain things, certain steps, and you have a very well defined actions, which we're going to jump in a second. Those actions will be more powerful with their description for the agent to understand what it can do with those actions, then maybe the main instructions here. So be wise to how you build the instructions. Don't make them large.
No.
My advice is to make them as small as you can, and add step by step if you want to basically expand to its functionality. But on that note, I think it's important that maybe we jump to the actions themselves.
I'm just conscious of time, Alicia, and maybe we should do like a second and follow up on this, where we like this can be the first episode of a multi-part series where we also go in and look at the actions, because I think if we go further kind of underneath the hood, and we can kind of have a cliffhanger for next episode. So I think we will look at how you play off of the actions, because I remember when I saw this the first time, you also kind of do prompting in the actions, right? That's also a part of the instruction set of the bot. We won't go into it now, but we can do that. But what we can cover now, I think, is the knowledge base that you have.
Okay.
So
that's actually a pretty good one. Yeah.
Let's do that, because I think the actions almost is a chapter by itself to see kind of how that is, because we also want to cover, let's say, the continuation. We did some on the processes. There's some really cool things where you send off messages and you kind of come back and you kind of continue on the same message. So ongoing, that's the message ID that you talked about in the Power App there. But let's check out the knowledge base, and then we can go back to that. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, a very good call. We're going to cover knowledge, and then I'll show you something fun as well that came as the side effect of building this agent. Okay. So first, the knowledge. As you can see here, you have flexibility to do whatever you want with the knowledge. You can add some good sources out of the box. Obviously, the Dataverse is there, SharePoint, any websites which are like 2 layers down that you can basically reference. And you really have some good flexibility here, especially with. So what I was doing, I decided to add two documents, physical documents, as the instructions for the guidance on onboarding, but also on how to submit the purchase order. I decided to do that because and upload it to the knowledge. So if somebody comes in and asks the question, I can answer that question based on that documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And another step of potentially experimenting with that is if you have some specific instructions based on, let's say, locality, language, or anything else, you can include that in the document. And that will be part of how you answer the question. It will basically maybe understand from your metadata where you are, who you are, and identify information that it has to retrieve based on what's included in the document. But quite an interesting one is the Dataverse, which is pretty powerful when it comes to what you can do with the Dataverse. So imagine you have just like database in general, right? You barely can understand what the column names are because they change all the time, and you want to have some definition of what maybe information in the Dataverse means. So you have some options of adding synonyms. As a good example, if I have a vendor ID, do I potentially need to recognize it as an account ID or customer ID, and you name it? And I can even add the description, right? So you can identify every single column in your Dataverse with some more synonyms to be better understanding when it comes to the knowledge processing. But also you can ground it in your own business data. So if you have something your glossary is very specific and it's not maybe a general knowledge, you can absolutely do that by adding lines of additional glossary into this data set. So very powerful, very powerful.
Cool. All right, that's very interesting. I've seen the synonyms, but I never thought about the glossary. And is that like a top level metadata that the reasoning engine then uses to kind of talk about some of these definitions that we're talking about here? How you're doing it?
I think it's going to be strictly related to the knowledge of those two tables that I added. I think let's just double check because you can specify each table. Yeah, so the glossary is on a higher level of the Dataverse. Right. The synonyms you can associate, obviously it's per columns for each table that you can define, but the glossary will be for overall table.
And I see you added two tables.
Correct.
Will that mean if they're kind of have some type of relationship between them, probably some relation between these two tables, will it kind of take that into account when it's looking up the one? Will it, if it's a one-to-many relation, will it return that complex query, or would it just look into both of those tables sequentially for the information? Do you know?
It's a good question. I think that's that's the outcome that we're looking for. Yeah. I'm not yet sure whether it's in production at the moment, but I know that this was kind of the outcome of where we're heading. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop on. We promised to stop on the knowledge, but I'm going to show you something. Okay. So I talked about. So we usually play with those agents within the studio, and you can just go to copilotstudio.com and create your own and try it, and anyone can do it. And then obviously, if you do have a subscription and you have access to Teams and Microsoft 365, you can actually test those agents with the teams. So just to give you an example, you don't have to even go and ask for the full publishing of the team. So you have an option here to say availability options, and you can publish it to everyone within the organization or simply to just the users. But for your testing, you can simply just take a link here, or I'm pretty sure it was the C agent in Teams. And what it will do, it will give this agent visibility inside your teams. So I pinned my agent, so it's called vendor management agent, and I'm pretty sure, I think you simply go to apps and search for your agent, and I have fully blown agent that now I can, which is remember, this is the autonomous agent, okay? And I decided to experiment because if I created a vendor and I have all of those records, now I want to see if I can query any data within that vendor. And as you can see here, I'm not going to show because I actually deleted the record before before our meeting, but I asked a couple of questions like. Uh, list the onboarding checks for has there been verified and so, and it just nicely formatting information from the vendor that I was asking. So you can see here the onboarding adventure works. It basically give all of the status as the onboarding completed, provide me the details, so all of the reasoning for checks being done, and it goes further. I can even ask it to provide the address. I think I asked what is the address of the somewhere in between here. What is the address? What documents has been provided? So it goes and reach out to the Dataverse as a knowledge, and it identifies information about the adventure works itself. If I want to, I can even go as far as saying send an email to Peter Robinson, just asking maybe more details. You can basically enable that agent to do it through the conversation as well. So we talk about the autonomous agent, but the multiple triggers here make it possible to reuse that agent for many other functionalities, like the team's onboarding team functionality to maybe query more data about the record.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is basically, because an autonomous agent is also then a co-pilot that you can chat with, and all of the it's reusing the same backend and all the actions and capabilities, and then that is just the domain of competency, I would call it, right? Almost like the knowledge and the actions and the triggers and all of that is just a solid base of information that is then contextualized inside of this orchestrator. And then you can also kind of infuse single questions and queries. You don't have to kind of do the full process at the end to do that. Yeah.
And just to maybe show you that what I mean about that, right? Yeah. We talked about knowledge. We didn't necessarily talk about the actions, but you've seen them in the flow. It's the I call it bucket of goodies, bag of goodies, where you basically have those very unrelated to each other per se actions. They are independently doing it with an agent, have a right description of what does it mean to split the document, what does it mean to send an email to somebody, what does it mean to create a record in F&O. And it has multiple triggers, right? Those triggers can be it can be somebody asking for onboarding or the documents or new purchase order, or maybe some legal stuff, or creating documents for just to sign and so on, or simple questions. And what happens here is, regardless of where is this trigger happening, you can kick off the Copilot Studio agent, and you can now dynamically create those flows. So the agent will basically understand the context of the question or the task, and it will start building those dynamic plans of what it has to do in order to complete the end-to-end process. So that's how we identify the power of agents being very agile, very adaptable, and give that power of intelligence to really deliver the end-to-end process. Right? And I'm going to finish.
That is an excellent kind of ending message. And I would love to also set up a new session where I pick your brain on just that, going underneath the hood and looking at the actions, because I've seen some magic happen there as well. And especially kind of how you, as you say, it comes to a certain point, it stands there just waiting. How do you get it to continue, and how do you infuse more actions into an ongoing process in an agent? Let's pick up on that.
Excellent.
All right.
I'll take you up on that. Yeah. No. Thank you so much for the time that everyone take to actually listen to it. I really appreciate it. I hope it was fascinating. It's very fascinating to me. So I hope we can continue and see some more details in the future.
We will. All right. And before we do that, leave a question in the comments, either on LinkedIn, where I'll post this, or on the YouTube channel, and then we'll make sure to get that in the next podcast, so I can ask you the questions. All right. Thank you so much, Alicja. It was great, and
pleasure.
We'll see you around. Bye.
Thank you.